Just a moment. Josefine Klougart from Denmark. So we covered them all. She has written 7 books in 7 years. So she's not been lazy. And they're far away from crime. It's more like poetry novels. I got that right. Okay. Do you want to use the mics? No, or you have got, high tech. And I say, no point in putting, now you got it. Fine. Can you just move ahead to the last one? The happiness index. Oh, stop there. Because it could be useful. Because seen from far away, you may think that these countries are very alike. They are not. They don't score high because they're similar, or they have the same natural resources or whatever. So we can start up with Gerður from Iceland. It's up in the left corner with this flag that looks like it's been stolen from Norway, which it in fact has. There are only 320,000 inhabitants in Iceland. It's like a small sector of Jaipur, and they have fish, and they have some hot springs, and they have a lot of tourists. So how can you be so happy?
Yes, we were really surprised when we learned that we were one of the happiest nations in the whole wide world, because it doesn't really feel like that.
You managed to keep a very sad face every time.
We are very depressed. We drink a lot. So we were really, really surprised. But it depends on who is asking, because we are not really frank. We really don't talk about our feelings. There is a story in the old Nordic mythology. It's called Skírnismál, or Skírnis journey. It's the only story that exists in the old Nordic mythology about the fertility god, Freyr. There should be more stories about him since he is a fertility god. Maybe they were just all so dirty that this is the only one that exists. But Freyr is wandering around the world of the gods, and he takes a seat at Odin's throne. And he should not have done that, because the throne of Odin works just like Google Earth. From that throne, he can see the whole wide world. And Freyr sees into the world of the giants, where a woman called Gerður is living. And he falls in love with her. And when he returns back to his family, his mother and his servant, he is so depressed, and because he really wants that woman, and he doesn't know how to get her, that he stops eating and he stops talking. This was way before the Norwegians started comfort eating. That's the nation that invented that tradition. So Freyr stops eating and stops talking, and that's where I will stop telling this mythology. I find it so interesting, his reactions. He's not talking about his feelings or slamming doors or anything. No, he just stops eating and speaking. And it isn't until his mother asks him, "What's wrong with you?" that she gets the answer that he's in love. So when somebody you don't know asks you if you're happy or not, you don't tell these complete stranger on the phone that you are broke, you have a tummy ache, and you're very, very depressed. You just don't say that. You say, "I'm fine. I'm so fine." And maybe you write a sad poem later in the evening about your true feelings, but you pretend. That's called politeness, where I come from. I don't want to hear how badly you are feeling today, for example. Let's all keep quiet about it and write sad poetry instead.
So, we could move to the other side of the map, to the white and blue. Finland, Minna. The Finnish people are not renowned for their smiles. I grew up watching Finnish theater and film. That was the most depressing in my youth, because you were sitting, drinking, not talking. And Finland, you have forests and lakes. So if you go by car in Finland, it's forest, 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 lake, forest, 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 lake, forever, for days. And then you had Nokia.
We did.
You had, and what now? What makes you so happy? What makes you so successful? Yeah, I know it's a heavy toll to answer that.
I think it's like Gerdur said, it depends who asks.
It's me.
No, it's you. You're Norwegian. You have a strong attitude, I recognize, towards Finns. So I'm not supposed to be smiling. Although I've said here before that we, as writers in Finland, we are quite critical, and the attitudes towards the society in Finland is quite critical. Still, I would say, if somebody outside comes to ask a question, are you happy? Do you think your country is a good one? We will absolutely say, yes, we are happy, this is the best country, because we don't make complaints. If a Finnish person goes to a restaurant and orders a steak, and she gets soup, she thinks, well, this is fine, I will eat this one. And it's terrible, the soup, and the waiter comes and, is it okay? Yes, thank you, yes, it's okay. So we don't make these public complaints in this way. But being serious, I think really the Nordic countries are the best places to live and grow up, because they are safe countries and because we have worked for equality more than 100 years, very seriously, all through the society, and that's quite rare.
Okay, so far it seems that we are happy because we don't want to admit that we're unhappy. Carin,
we should have a philosophical question, what is happiness, if you really want to talk about it.
So Carin, Sweden. Sweden is the largest country in Scandinavia or in the Nordic, the big brother. They are very industrialists. They have the company. They have Volvo and Saab, or they don't have it anymore. They sold it to the Chinese, and they have H&M. They have Ericsson, Electrolux, IKEA. They have hundreds of well-known brands. Does that make you happy, Carin?
I think so, yes. And we also have Björn Borg and ABBA. Does it work? My microphone, does it work? Maybe not. Well, we also have Björn Borg and ABBA, that's what I said. As opposed to Iceland and Finland, we do talk about our feelings, actually. We say how we feel and we discuss it and we try to help each other out. So I think that's a good thing about Sweden, that we are very open-minded and discuss really important matters like that. We also have the clear skies and the clean lakes and very good drinking water, beautiful nature, forests, and all that. And we also haven't been to war for more than 200 years. I think that's quite an important thing for our happiness. Isn't that good enough?
You stayed out of the war. We had to fight it.
You had to fight it.
Yes, okay, but a second opinion, Sweden, from Zach, because you escaped Sweden and chose India instead,
yes.
So you can look from the outside in.
Yes, I live in exile in South India. You will hear from my accent that my accent is very Bangalore English, and so if that is your assessment, you're very correct. But I was born in Finland, next door to Minna, and I grew up in Sweden, next door to Carin. these other people I don't know so much about. I haven't lived next door to them. But so I think like when I look back to my life in the Nordic countries and Scandinavia and my growing up years there in Finland and Sweden, one of the things that strikes me is that, you know, this idea of welfare, somehow it has to do with a certain idea of self-sufficiency as well. Because for example, if I look at my dad, who is like a very old Finnish guy, so he would, or my mom also. So like if they need food, they go into the forest. Even today, they're very old, but they go into the forest and pluck their own food, or they take it from their own garden. And they go only to the supermarket if there is something that they can't, you know, produce themselves. And like if their car breaks down, they fix it themselves. And they have this sort of whole idea of being like a self-sufficient unit within the family. And like even when they need to heat up the house, my dad goes out into his forest with his chainsaw and cut down the tree to get firewood. And one day the tree fell on top of him. And he sort of got crushed under the tree, but he kind of crawled out, and then he crawled to the hospital, or maybe he crawled into the car and managed to drive himself to the hospital. And he asked the doctor, like, this tree fell down on top of me. What should I do? And the doctor checked his rib cage and said, yeah, you have a few cracked ribs. And my dad says, but you know, I need to go home and heat the house. How should I go about this? The doctor said, take 2 aspirin and then go back and cut that tree. So, and that is a slightly Finnish attitude perhaps, but I think it also, I can see it in Sweden that people have this thing that, you know, they, at least in the older generations, like my parents' generation, there's still that idea that, you know, you create the world that you need, you know, like the food you need to eat, you still grow it yourself or pluck it yourself, and if there's any problematic situation, you solve it yourself. And I think that is very fundamental for welfare, that you have that attitude that you are the master of your world, and which that generation of people have. And I have it to a lesser degree. If a coconut tree fell down on top of me, or even a coconut in Bangalore, I would probably call for an ambulance and want to be in hospital for a few days. So I'm not as self-sufficient as my dad, but that attitude is still there. But when I go back to visit Sweden, when my books are published there and I have to promote them and I talk to people, I'm noticing that people are less and less, have less and less of this self-sufficiency that the older generations have. And I think maybe some of you or others also will recognize these things, that there used to be that lot of thing of taking care of yourself and fixing things on your own, like a kind of a, you know, slightly rough tradition. But today more and more people are used to like going to the supermarket, and they wouldn't even know that the milk comes out of a cow. They think the milk comes out of a box. And so that whole idea of self-sufficiency is kind of vanishing. I'm wondering what it's gonna do to the welfare state, because the state cannot provide welfare for people who are unable to give themselves welfare. So as an outsider looking back in, I'm following the development in these countries very acutely, and listening to people on this panel, I find it very interesting to see what they are saying about the matter.
I can recognize what you say about old people in these countries. I think are very self-sufficient, but it's changing, as you say. So, but Denmark is a small country. You can bicycle across the country in a day. I tried. And Denmark doesn't really have any natural resources. Farmland, yes, but not much more. So they only have 6 million very clever inhabitants. Or what, Josefine?
What was your question? What was it exactly?
I didn't question. I said
Oh.
you just explain why you're so happy. You have nothing.
Yeah. Well, Well, I think I'm going to answer in a very boring way because I think it's pretty obvious why we're a happy nation. It's because of our well-functioning welfare system. We have a high degree of equality in the society, and we're very good at redistributing the welfare. The value that the society creates together, it is distributed to the whole society. Or anyway, that was how it used to be. These days, as we're going to talk about, it's challenged from within. So the populations in several of the Scandinavian countries are experiencing a liberal movement, a right-wing liberal movement. That I would like us to discuss that later, because I think it's very interconnected with the explanation why we are happy as it was or as it still is. We have very good free public schools. We have free education, free healthcare. We also have an independent press, which of course is working in the way that it creates a high level of transparency in governance and stuff like that. So it's not a funny answer, but it's I think that's a true answer, that equality is what it's all about. And the reason why equality produces a happy nation or happy people is obviously that it removes fear. So you don't have to be anxious that you can't support your family. So you face life from a very, very privileged position, the privileged position of being safe, fundamentally safe. And that allows you to do all kinds of stuff. That allows you to, to be physical active. That allows you to go winter swimming, as a lot of Danes are doing, and that allows you to create art and literature. Yes.
Yeah. I totally agree. The Nordic countries are known for their welfare system. And that is maybe the only thing where all the countries are very similar. It's education, healthcare, everything is for free. If you get sick, you get pay. You get pension from your 67. And that is, of course, a wonderland. However, that is distribution of wealth. But how did we create it? So, because it's easy to distribute when you have a lot, and we do have a lot. So, if you look at Norway, it's my country. We are maybe the only of the five that's more obvious why we are rich, because we have the oil, and all our neighbors are looking at our oil, and they don't get it, of course. So we can allow ourselves many excesses, but still, when I have researched for this session, talked to specialists and so on, and read reports and research, there is one word that comes up again for all these countries. It's trust. There is a fundamental trust between the inhabitants and the state. And by the state, I don't mean the government, because the government changes, and we don't trust them very much. It's more the fundamental trust of the institutions, of the police, of the court, but also of the health system, and civil servants, and so on. So, and with this trust, everything becomes much more easy. And there is very little conflict because of this. It's consensus. So you have, when wages are decided in big parts of these sectors in all 5 countries, it's a negotiation between the trade unions or the labor unions, the employers, and the state. And they always, more or less, always pretty easily agree. And this, there is no conflict. We have one language. There is a fundamental trust, makes everything very easy. And because of this, we also avoid corruption. So that was mostly comes up as the fundamental at the bottom of it. I would like to have this, take the same round. Gerður, what about the trust in Iceland? Because you were really tricked by your politicians. They robbed you of almost the whole island and put them in Panama. So how is it about trust in Iceland these days?
Do we trust the politicians? It was a huge shock in 2008 when we had this financial crisis and the government had to resign and we had to vote for again. And we tried to have a leftist government. We tried to get rid of the corrupted politicians, and the leftists stayed there for like 4 years, and then we got the same people again. So we really...
There must be some trust then.
There must be a whole lot of trust, yeah. We just forgive each other very easily. We are only, as he said, 320,000 people, or 999 since I'm here. Yeah. So yeah, the rest of them, the rest of the hobbits, they are on that island, floating away in the Atlantic Ocean.
So there is not so many to choose from.
No,
Yeah.
there are not many people to choose from, and so we chose again the same people that had been asked to resign 4 years earlier. Really strange. So, and some of them are still in power, and we have had this discussion about the Panama Papers and those names that appeared there. They are still in power because the little people always believe that if they vote for the rich ones, they will also get rich like them, as if they are really thinking about the little people instead of just trying to protect their wealth. But in such a small society, we are all related to each other somehow. We even have a website where we can, if we meet somebody new, we can put the name on this website and find out how much we are related to each other. So that people are not, giving birth to children with 6 toes on each foot. I think that's the reason why.
I think this is the ultimate in trust.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful feeling that we trust each other, but sometimes it really works against us.
How is trust these days in Finland?
Yes, we trust our politicians and the officials. It's always a shock if there is someone who did a mistake, because we really trust they are doing their job. And at the moment we are having a very funny election. It's actually tomorrow we are voting for the president. It's always 6 years for one president, and the one can have 2 seasons, so it's 12 years. And we have a very good president at the moment who is candidating for the next season. Everybody knows he's winning, but we still have a big election. There are 6 candidates, and we have a nice debates on TV, and they agree on everything. And we have a very high rate in voting rate. We are voting for the president, although we know what's the conclusion. The only point we are actually now discussing is to whom should we have alliance, with any. If it's EU, if it's the Nordic countries, or if it's the NATO. But no differences there too, according to the politicians.
Good. Let's jump to Denmark this time. What about trust in Denmark?
Well, I've been thinking like mad about this question because it's, I think it's a difficult question. Obviously, there's a high level of trust, and obviously there are good reasons why we should trust the system. As you say, we trust the state, we trust the institutions to be fair and treat people with respect and equally. And in that sense, I think it's true that there's a high level of trust. At the same time, one thing that you could maybe mention is that there's a high level of Denmark. We're very good at at gathering around. We make how do you say that? Like football clubs, like clubs and small society within the state. And that's maybe an interesting point that is something that is, it's not going that well. It was better before, and I think now I get to the point. The thing is that when you have a very strong state, you really tend not to build this kind of societies. So that is why we don't have very strong, I would say, families in Scandinavia compared to, for example, how I experience it is in India, because we're used to the state to take care of our elderly people, of our children's schools, and so on. So there's a paradox there that at one and the same time, we are bad at creating, small, spontaneous, natural, grown societies or groups where you care about each other, as for example families. At the same time, we're very good at participating in sports and building clubs and that kind of things. So there's a weird paradox there.
I find this a very good point, because the institution of the family is being eroded in the Nordic countries, because you don't need a family, because the state will take care of you. It's maybe a horrible thought, but the United Nations proving it makes us happy at least. But it's a big difference in family structure between a country like India and the Nordic countries, where you have many people living alone. And then as she's comments, especially in Denmark, you seek into like a Jewish kibbutz, living together, a group of youngsters. So, Carin, happiness in Sweden. I hate to mention it in the same word, but okay.
But we are only the 10th, so we are the worst of the Nordic countries. Yeah, the least happy. Still quite happy though, but I agree that there is sort of a border between generations in Sweden. We don't very often cross the generational borders when social intercoursing. So that might be a problem, might not. It's a different way of living, of course. But when we go to election, we wouldn't be like Finland, that when everybody wants the same thing. We are quite opposite. I think we do pay the highest taxes in the world, and whoever we vote for, we will still pay the highest taxes in the world, so it won't make a difference in that sense anyway. But then we are very much debating the immigration politics right now, so that will divide us into different groups. Some wants it to be a lot of immigration and some does not. So it's that's what divides us into different groups.
I'll catch you up on that, because it was my next point. The Nordic countries get, in a varying degree, but we all get quite a lot of immigrants, refugees and other immigrants. There's a lot of Swedish immigrants to Norway, but that's not doesn't change our society much. But those who come from far away, they come from countries where there is no trust between inhabitants and the state. And they had no reason to have any trust. Because the state never did anything for them, the police harassed them, and you can go on and on. There's a lot of corruption and so on. So when they come to the Nordic countries, we cannot expect them to just turn a knot and suddenly they have trust. So this creates quite a cultural divide. So you can just continue on this, Carin.
You could continue.
Oh, you can.
I think you're talking about me. I come from Bangalore, and I'm that far away person to come to Sweden. And actually, I have started to wonder like how long this trust can last in our countries, because when I grew up there in Sweden, there was like a fairly comprehensive welfare system that took care of people. But just like the other year when my mom had a stroke, It started with like pain in her right arm. So she went to the hospital. But these hospitals have become very privatized and commercialized. And I mean, even if it's a government hospital, they rent a doctor by the hour. So you never see the same doctor again in your whole life. So the first doctor said that you just have a pain in your arm, you go home and exercise. And then a few days later, her pain was even worse. And she went back to the hospital and said that this is not going away, this pain. And there was a different doctor, because they just come and work for 1 hour and get like a huge fee, and then they go away. And so again, the doctor said that just go home and exercise a little bit more, you'll be fine. And then like about a week later, and she had gone to hospital again, and third time, and been sent home without any effect. And about a week later, she couldn't even speak. And then they call a helpline type of thing and explain that the symptoms are like this, you know, right arm doesn't work, and speech is blurred and all these things. And the person on the helpline said that you have a stroke and you are about 1 hour away from dying. And you should immediately get into an ambulance and to the nearest hospital for surgery. And so then they sent finally they sent an ambulance, and they managed to rescue her like just in the last minute before my mom was going to pass away from the stroke. And she had seen 3 doctors. And I'm just wondering, asking to myself, and now she's alive, she's still recovering. 2 years later, she's like slowly coming back to life. But if that first doctor had diagnosed her correctly, she might have been perfectly fine. If the second one had diagnosed her correctly, she might have had a little bit of an impediment. And if the third one had diagnosed her correctly, she would have still, you know, probably been okay. But like so the system, when it's becoming like, you know, privatized, commercialized, and responsibility is given away to all kinds of strange characters who walk into work for 1 hour and dismissing patients, you know, at a rapid speed, spending only a few minutes with each patient. I think you're going to interrupt me now, but please don't.
I will.
And
because Zach, you have to remind that they come here to hear how good we are, not how bad we are.
No, but everybody said we're really good. No, I'm just thinking that 20% doubt how good we are going to be in the future unless we take care of our welfare system, because we are letting it slip through our hands. And let me assure you, like, I mean, I'm come from the outside, I'm watching you. So I can see these changes, and how like that earlier tradition of there would be a doctor in every village, the doctor would know every patient in that village. Now that is no longer there due to this commercialization of the medical care industry in Sweden. I don't know, probably in Iceland, Denmark, Finland, and all the other countries is wonderful and everybody is healthy and nobody dies ever. But in Sweden, I've noticed that like you're getting closer and closer to death. And I'm wondering like, if this is, I mean, maybe I'm just sort of a neurotic conspiracy maniac seeing in one little thing that there's some problem growing up. But I noticed also in the newspapers they're writing about these things. And earlier I thought that what you read in the newspaper is just, you know, they exaggerate things. But when it happens to my own mother, I'm starting to wonder a little bit. Okay, now you can interrupt me.
Yes, I have interrupted you. Can the others feel free? And are the Nordic system, is it under pressure from immigration?
Are all your mothers alive and happy?
So what's the question? Are we under pressure because of the immigration?
There is a conflict between
Yeah.
the local culture and the new people. Can the Nordic system survive it, or will it be super fine?
Yes, it can, because we need these people. We really need immigration, and we have something to offer for them if they can suffer the climate. And I'm writing about people over 90 years old because the most growing age group in Finland is people over 90. So we have older and older and older people, and less those who work and pay their pensions and their care and everything. So we need people to work. We don't have enough people, and that's quite an elite problem in the world at the moment, that there's a place where we are rich, we have climate, we have pure water, we have a ready-made system, but we don't have people. So welcome.
Well, yeah. No doubt that we need people. Do you need people in Iceland?
Yes, there are brilliant immigrants in Iceland, mainly from Poland. There's always a Piotr in every class, I have realized. There's always one Piotr. And I've been teaching creative writing in school, and there are a lot of children from foreign origins in Icelandic schools, and that's good. I think we get the best people over to Iceland to work for us, and we are eager to get to know them a little bit more. They tend to keep them for themselves, but that's because we are so closed and we are not polite enough to welcome them to our homes. And that's just how it is. And so I get back to the old Nordic mythology. It's all about us, the gods, and them, the giants. And we are so afraid of them because when the world comes to an end, the giants will rush over the bridge and kill us all. That will be fun. And so if you didn't know how the world will come to an end, this is where you heard it first. The giants will kill us. So we are always afraid of other nations and other people. And well, as people on an isolated island, it was always dangerous when we saw a ship coming. We never knew what would happen. In 1627, there was a ship from Algiers and with a captain from the Netherlands, and they kidnapped a lot of people and sold them as slaves. One of my ancestors was among them, but he was lazy, so he was sent back a year later.
And the first thing he did, Iceland. That's good.
His name was Halldór, and he's my ancestor. And the first thing he did when he returned home was to write about what had happened during that year. So we're okay at writing books and telling stories, but working with our own very hands, no. That's for somebody else. So yes, we need immigrants. We are way too lazy to do what has to be done.
Denmark, you have been very restrictive on immigration.
Yes, I'm sorry to say, I think it's a tragedy because obviously we can handle immigrants, we even need them, but I think there is like an economic elite in our countries that has convinced the lower classes, the population, that the immigrants are the problems, while the real problem is the inequality. The real problem is the inequality that rises from capitalism. So the big enemy, we're not even seeing that, how capitalism is a machine that runs over also societies that are as regulated as ours. And it really needs, it's a monster that needs to be tamed, I think. So all that we are,
So the audience can understand.
Could I just finish?
Yep.
The thing was that they succeed in creating an image of the enemy as the immigrants, while we're just like eating fighting over the crumbs from the rich people's table. So we don't even see the fundamental problem of our society.
Carin, you may have a different view on this. Okay, is the clock right or wrong? Because I think it had started long before we. How many? Okay, it's 15 minutes left. Okay. When Carin has had her, we open for questions.
Yes, we need to take immigrants, but not right now, because we welcomed 150,000 back in 2015, mostly from Syria, but also from Sudan, Eritrea, and Afghanistan. So I don't think we are capable of taking any more right now, but definitely in the future, I think 3,000 to 5,000 a year would be a good number, because that makes a very nice mixture of culture and experiences in the society. That would be my answer.
Okay, we'll open for questions, but as you can hear in the audience, these countries are not alike. the panelists are not alike. There are many questions you have, I guess. We can open here. Just remember, there is an echo. When you have answers, there's an echo here. So it's not that your question is stupid or that you don't articulate it, but it can be difficult to hear. So we may have to repeat, okay?
My question is, how can you be happy without seeing the sun for 9? My question is, how can you be happy without seeing the sun for 9 months a year?
Any one of us can answer this. Who will volunteer?
9 months is not true. We have, I think the northern part of the Nordic countries have like 6 weeks a year with that, and we have quite the opposite in the summer too. So it's survivable, definitely.
Can I give you a fun fact? In Oslo, we probably have 150 hours more daylight than you have here in Jaipur per year. The reason is that here near to the equator, the sun will sink straight down and come up straight. So when the sun goes below the horizon, it gets dark almost immediately. Same in the morning. But our sun is going down like this. So it stays just below the horizon and it keeps light for 2-3 hours. Same in the morning. So we have much more daylight. And maybe that explains the whole happiness.
I'd also like to add a very important small point. It is really good for tourism in India that the sun doesn't come up much in the winter in these countries, because people come here and spend their money at your lovely Indian hotels and beaches.
In May and June there is daylight 24/7, so that's what we are waiting for the whole winter. It's not that bad.
I would like to know if the governments of the state are willing to take more refugees, because what I see now in my country, Germany, government's starting to try to regulate the refugees, and when other countries don't start taking also the refugees now, it might be too late for them. And how influence this really the level of happiness?
There is a big divide in Scandinavia or in Nordic countries. Denmark has almost stopped it. And Josefine would like to open. Carin in Sweden, they have free flow, like in Germany. They would like to stop it. And the other countries here are in between. Or Iceland is always floating out in the sea on themselves. Any more comments on that? It's a big debate. It's the biggest debate we have in our society. Just keep the microphone close to your mouth.
Hello. You see, the Nordic countries had the biggest migration in the 30s in US. Almost 30 million people migrated from Ireland and Nordic countries. In between, you became rich. They were the poorest country in the history. If you see the Midwest, including Walter Mondale, he was a Norwegian, by the way, and they were all settled in, and first going to the coast of Canada and then going to America and then settling in Midwest. The entire agrarian region is covered by the Nordic countries' immigrants. And the tune of 30 million people immigrated in 30s and before. And today, I'm just asking a simple question, since you have been asking a very serious question about happiness and the quotient of happiness through UN and all, what their parameters are, I don't know. But how do you view the immigration or the quotient of happiness 10 years hence from now in Nordic countries? You have been all debating about what is going on today or what has been in the past. What is your take in 10 years hence for Nordic countries as far as quotient of happiness and immigration is concerned? Nobody is telling here what exactly is the problem. For example, Sweden. Sweden has a stark reality. Couple of months back, and certain ghettos, even these guys, they can't travel, go into that particular areas. They know it very well. Hello? I'm telling you, they are not speaking from the point of view why they are stopping the immigration. They should say, come out completely and openly, what is the reason of not taking more immigrants. They are all shying away from the cultural dichotomy or the different kind of attitudes, cultural attitudes. They should come out openly and tell the people that we don't accept them. Why not? Hello? Yeah. Now my basic question is the happiness quotient and what you people think 10 years hence from now about Nordic countries and the immigration policy. Thank you.
Okay, it was a long question, and David, so let's end with the last one. Will the Nordic countries be just as happy in 10 to 15 years?
After 20 or 30 years, we will be. But I think we are. We have already started a big transition. We have to change, and it's really interesting to listen to the discussions here in Jaipur. There are a lot of discussions about identity, and that's something we haven't really realized yet, because identity to us is very simple. We all talk the same language, we all have the same religion, our grandparents had the same religion, the same language. That's the identity. And when we talk about Pico Iyer or people like this, you cannot say where they come, what's their language, what's their religion. It's the identity which is, you have to build it again. And this is something that the Nordic countries have to admit. What is being Finnish? What is being Swedish? There was a big fuzz in Finland, it was in August. There was a small terroristic attack in a city called Turku. And our minister said on the TV, he couldn't say who did it, but she said she didn't look like a Finn. And that's something you cannot say. And she said it on the TV, and all the people got so mad. We have to change. This is not the world we're living in. And I think this is going to be quite difficult for all the Nordic countries. Maybe easier for Sweden. You are a little bit ahead of us.
So I think, Carin, you had to answer for all of us, okay? Because we can, those with the mic, can you look at, no, they say it's over. The clock is 0, but it started too early. One more question.
What is your opinion regarding universal basic income and abolishment of the death penalty, the pros and cons of it? Do you recommend it system to be adopted for the rest of the world? The universal basic income and the abolishment of the death penalty.
In Scandinavia, women would also be asking questions. Think about that. This is something new. 4 men asking?
Yeah, but what was the question was about death penalty? When was it abolished? It was so long ago, I think it was the Vikings. No, but if I look, I don't know when it was in Norway, but after the war, we executed quite a few. But we cannot be very proud of everything. In our constitution, made in 1814, there was one paragraph forbidding Jews to come to the Kingdom of Norway. And it existed until like 50 years ago or something. It's very sad and strange. There's a woman. No, he's screaming that we have to go down. Okay. Thank you for coming. If you take something home, I hope it's trust. Because I believe that's the most fundamental we have between our citizens and all the servants. But as you can understand, we're not without problems. Thank you.